Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, the 13th of August, and I just want to think about what options humanity has for going forward out of the mess that we are in. Now, we are being groomed. We are most certainly being groomed for one option, and that is to be ruled over by another species. That is, to my mind, there's no doubt about that is where we are supposed to go. But I say it is not the only possibility, and I just want to explore some other possibilities and how to think about this. Now, I watched Disclosure Day last night, and I must say I am completely underwhelmed. It is not what I thought it would be, and it was actually quite a bit of a nothing burger, really. I mean, the whole story in the film was about having the evidence, recorded evidence, and bringing it to the masses. And the way in which they did that in the end through a television station, that was not only blue-eyed, that is a complete distortion of the reality that we're actually living in, because that's not going to happen. Yeah, they kind of tried to prevent it by shutting off the electricity of the television station. That's the first thing. Yeah. And then when the electricity is back up, the television station can freely broadcast. I don't think so. Yeah, there are other ways of shutting that down. And the next step was that every television station in the world would pick up that broadcast. Yeah, and show it to the people. I mean, at that point, we're in La La Land. That would imply that the people that make the decisions in the individual television stations actually have the power to do that, which they don't. Obviously not. So the whole thing was a bit stupid. Although there were a couple of things in this film that the film only touched very lightly on, and that is what I would have explored when it comes to Disclosure Day. First of all, the religious. I think I was touched on very lightly. One person being religious and accepting the existence of other forms of life in the cosmos, and another religious one that fell on her knees and started worshipping the contactee, which, yeah, I think that's what happened to Jesus. But I say, I was only very lightly that was touched on. The other thing that was touched on in the film, and I think that was very important, and that is how contact is being made in the first place. And yes, I would agree with that. Throughout humanity's history, it was made through individuals that became contactees, what you might call the prophets of old, the seers, or now the channelers. That is how contact is made, and it is made without technology. We are the technology through which contact can be made. So it showed that. But the rest of it was really, I don't know, as I say, I'm extremely underwhelmed. But everybody says full disclosure is going to come. And no, full disclosure is not going to come. Cosmic disclosure is not going to come. The humanity is not prepared for full disclosure, but for one possibility that will then be disclosed. That is not the fullness. That's just one possibility. And that possibility is the disclosure of the rulers, of the truth of the rulers, which would be beings that are not of this world. And humanity is being made ready for that disclosure. It's being groomed to accept that as truth, as the only truth, as the only possibility. And religion is playing a very great part in making humanity ready to accept that, to accept the rulers, the higher beings, the ones that are so much greater than us, that we will then serve as children. We will be their children and we will be their servants. So that is one way by which we were being made ready. The bride is being prepared. The bride is being groomed to receive that reality. So religion. The book of the Revelation talks about two kinds of people that will be in that reality. I'm not even sure if we will all experience it. But those that were made ready will most certainly experience it, I would say. The book of Revelation talks about those that serve me. Glorify God, all those that are his servants. That is, they've come into full agreement with the rulership and they're playing their part in it, most likely suppressing the voice of their own conscience whilst doing it. But so they are part of New Jerusalem, and those that fear me, those that will be there out of fear, that will obey out of fear. I think we can now add a third group to New Jerusalem, and that is those that absolutely don't give a shit, because none of this is real. Yeah, they don't care one way or another. This is only an experience, and it doesn't matter what happens. I think you can put them in with the rest. They're definitely not going to be an obstacle to what this future happening. But they are being groomed as well into that perception of themselves, where they really don't care anymore. This is not real, so it doesn't matter. So this is where humanity is going. And I'd say there are more and more contactees in this world at the moment toward that future. Handmaidens, servants and handmaidens are prophesying left, right, and center to make disciples to that future. So the way I think, again, you don't have to agree with me. I'm just my thoughts about this. I think the way that you become a contactee to these beings is simply by seeking. And this is how the system works. Yeah? Ask and you shall receive. Again, in the field is no judgment. That is what Jesus said. You will be given without judgment. If it's your desire, you will be given. And it is quite simply those that stand here looking for something greater than themselves, telling them what they are, what they should think, what they should say, what they should do. Again, Jesus did that. That was the way of the cross. So, yeah, I was thinking today about, people like Neville Goddard, yes, and Joseph Watson, what's his name? Manifestation according to your desire. And of course, one of the thing they're talking about is relationships. Find your perfect partner. Visualize your perfect partner and you will meet him or her. And I think it is just that, seeking a relationship with a being higher, that you perceive as being higher as yourself, that will then do things for you. But again, you have to do as you're told. You have to accept their judgment of you as your own. Yeah, and the more and more people are seeking those higher beings, and yes, you will find your perfect partner in another dimension. And I mean, I would say they see you coming. Yeah, oh look, there's somebody who doesn't know what he or she is, and she wants to be told. Yeah, I tell you what you are, and I give to you, and you be my servant, and we will be happy for all eternity. Yeah, not the kind of relationship that I'm looking for. But again, that is what humanity is groomed towards seeking. Even the most that declare themselves to be the most spiritual, yeah, they're sitting there and saying, we must seek the will of the Creator for our life. Again, you're seeking something whose will must be done. Well, you'll find it. It will not be the all. Yeah? It will not be something beyond creation. It will be something in creation. It'll be another being. It always will be another being because the all cannot be known. That is what every Eastern teachings will tell you. In it, there is no judgment. In it, there is no will. All of those things are part of consciousness, and the all is beyond consciousness. So if you meet something with a will and a knowledge and whatever, that's another consciousness. That is not the all. Never will be. You cannot know the all. But you make yourself the servant to the will of another being, because you don't know your own. Again, that is the future that humanity is groomed toward, and that is the disclosure that they will have. They will find what they're seeking. And those rulers, again, will not disclose themselves until humanity is ready. That means humanity is no longer a threat to them. Because I think in the end they're cowards. So really it is making us harmless so that they can rule over us in safety. That is the grooming that is happening at the moment. Through religion, through the denial of self, through the denial of everything. Well, not a future that I want to be part of, to be quite honest. Now, to get out of that, or away from that point that we are going toward. Again, let me just say this very quickly. This whole quantum idea, yeah? Existence is linear. Existence will always be linear. The experience of consciousness is linear, and that is not going to change. You will always go from one point to another, and that is linear. Yeah? The only thing that would change in the quantum idea is that the field, again, the all, contains all possibility. There is not just one point you can go to, and it is determined by some God, because it is His will that you go there. Yeah? Tons of possibilities of where we might go. And we can choose. But once you have chosen your point, again, the journey from one point, from where you are now to whatever point in the field, will be linear. There's a line between one point and another. It's not always a straight line. Yeah, you might go to that point meandering or zigzagging all over the place, but if you've chosen a point, you're going there. That is a linear experience. And yeah, the only quantum thing is that there's more than one choice of where you go. But you can only make one point your experience. So it will always be linear. You cannot exist as a quantum being. That means experiencing all the possibilities in one moment. You would, I said it many times, and I'm saying it again, you are going to fry. That's it. Information overload, woof. That's what's going to happen. You're going to disintegrate. Consciousness dead. End of. That's what's going to happen. So the only way to stay in existence is a linear path, sorry. Because that's all you can handle. Right. Other possibilities. Let me just go to other possibilities, because I was thinking about that today. Again, it is what we are seeking. Yeah? Contactees. They were seeking in the first place. As I said, the tentacles went out to find a connection somewhere, and they found something according to what they were looking for. You want something to rule over you, your tentacle will find that. Right. But if you're looking for something different, a different future, a different system. Now, what we're talking about in the New Testament, in the book of the Revelation, is a straightforward dictatorship. Yeah? Ruled over, first of all, by fear, because the angels will come and slaughter, and then the population will be kept as children, dumbed down so that they don't know anything else anyway. And then the dictatorship can exist in all eternity. Well, they think it can. I think truth always rises at some point. But still, so that is the most basic part of governance. And it is totally straightforward. Yeah. It is, at the moment, again, let me say, not straightforward for us, because we are actually more evolved than that. They really have to batter us into that state. But we need to fall. We need to regress to get to that point, but they're working very hard on regressing us. And apparently it can be done. Right. So we're looking at something a bit more evolved than the straightforward dictatorship and the worship of the one at the top. Does that exist in the universe? That is to say, if we were seeking as becoming contactees, are there more evolved beings out there that we can make contact with? Of course, in order for that to happen, you would have to be that yourself. So you have to become that evolved being before you can know others. You have to be on their level, on their wavelength, in order to make contact. So again, first of all, you would have to work on yourself, on your own desire, on your own vision of what is happening, and see yourself in it and make that your truth. So what kind of system might be out there that we could be a part of, other than being ruled over by the lunatic gods? Well, if I look again, I look at nature, because everything that is created out of the field. Yeah. And if you look at the what you might call lower consciousness, it is actually less and less self-conscious, from the mineral to the vegetative to the animal. They seem to be naturally forming ecosystems. Yeah. And if that is not directed by reason, by higher reasoning, by knowledge, but it seems to come out of a more primordial knowledge, then I think that is closer to the truth of the all. An ecosystem is closer to the truth of the all than a dictatorship is. So, again, if there were other beings we can contact by becoming them ourselves, beings that live in an ecosystem, in a cosmic ecosystem, where they give, they receive that which is beneficial to every part of the ecosystem without denying what that part is, but accepting that it is what it is and giving to it and receiving of it. So that kind of a system. Now, as we stand at the moment, I would say there are only very, very few humans left that could actually rise to that level of consciousness. Most are dumbed down sheep by now, which is a problem. And even if you were in contact with beings like that, what then? That's the question. What then? What do you do? From this moment onward, there's an awful lot more questions than answers, I tell you that. I mean, to be on a level where you can accept others without dumbing yourself down and without accepting their rulership, but stand in your own truth, then things become extremely complicated, because it's a more complicated system. So it should be more complicated to function in it. Yeah, I mean, what do you do? I mean, we would definitely be in the minority in this world at the moment. What do we do? Do we leave? To be quite honest, I don't want to leave. This is who I am. This is my world. Again, in order to function in such a system, you would first of all acknowledge your own existence, acknowledge what you are, and stand in that truth. Which, again, most have lost that truth. They've forgotten what they are. So, no, leaving, I don't know, leaving wouldn't be an option for me, because I love this world. And the other thing that really gets me is you would leave this world to the lunatics. Yeah. Humanity, obviously, but What about the other parts? The ones that can maybe not defend themselves in such a big way. The mineral, the vegetative, the animal. Do you just leave them to suffer under the rulership of the gods? But to me, that is not an option. And even with humanity, I can't say that the sheep are in the sheep state out of their own choice. They were brainwashed. Yeah, something was done to them. They're actually victims. They're not there out of their own choice. So you leave them in their victimhood. So, okay, but you would not be the majority. And you could not actually stand up and say that you're speaking for humanity as a whole, because humanity as a whole wouldn't be on that wavelength. So what do you do then? If there were, again, a disclosure, or could you even disclose beings like that to the ones that are on a lower level? Would they even be able to see them or recognize them or understand them? They will understand what is on their own level, which is really the biblical gods, but would they understand anything else? So the only thing then, if you wanted to change the world, would again set yourself up as rulers. And that is a very dangerous step, because that might just take you around the same circle again. You would have to create a dictatorship of your own. Are you still with me? And that is my problem with all of this, because that to me would be the only way to save the world, would be to set up a dictatorship. Temporary dictatorship, which was from the beginning in the old, was it Greek or Roman? I don't know. Skips me at the moment. That was the idea from the start, that dictatorships should be temporary. But we've already seen through history that they have a nasty habit of becoming permanent. So there's a pitfall that we would really have to learn from our own experience, really, and stay aware of that possibility. But I really think, in the end, the idea of ruling over the masses is not wrong. It's just with what intention are you ruling over them? For yourself, or to slowly but surely move them, the rest, to a higher level of consciousness? And can you keep hold of that goal? Can those that come after you keep a hold of that goal, or will they, after a while, as it looks like they've always done, use their position of power for themselves? In which case the whole thing will go down again. We will have risen up for a while, and then the whole thing will go down again. I think that is, the circle that's been happening over and over again. The last time the whole thing went down was with the emergence of Christianity. That was the latest fall. But I think the mystery schools were already in the idea of a cosmic web and being a part of the cosmos, not being slaves, not being servants, but stood up in their own humanity as humans and say, we are part of the cosmos, because that's the place where we have to go to. We have to stand as humans and say, this is what we are. We want to be a part of everything else. And I think we were there, we were close to it. We were going toward that. And then again, people used their power to rule over. That is Christianity, and the whole thing was dragged down again. can we make it this time? Can we get to a more enlightened state? And this is our opportunity. This is the opening of a window. This is our opportunity to go to a higher place, not losing who we are, but being ourselves on a higher level. But I think really at the moment, the only way of doing that is a dictatorship. And then actually being able to keep it temporary and keep the dictatorship always with the same intention. And that is to raise everybody else. And in which case, the dictatorship will destroy itself in the end. The dictatorship is there to destroy itself, and that is, most dictatorships do not function on that intention. But could that be done? So here I leave it at that. That is, I think, the question that humanity really has to ask itself. And to even start asking itself to even go into the quantum field of possibilities and see what it could be. And we'll first have to get out of the idea of there is only one truth and we all must go there and there's a God that will rule over us. Yeah? And we must get out of fear that the gods will clobber us or something like that. And we most certainly must get out of the idea that this is all an illusion and nothing and it doesn't really matter. Those three we have to overcome and be ourselves before we can even, and then go into the quantum field and say, what are our options? And actually start discussing options of what humanity can actually be, or how we should organize ourselves, and what it is we should be in contact with out there, and what it is we should bloody well walk away from, because they're no good. Yeah? The heavens are not all good. They're not all sweetness and light. And again, make rational choices that are beneficial to us. Anyway, yeah, I think that is what we should be discussing. I think it's clear enough that reality exists out there. So I think we should start talking what it is we actually do with that. Anyway, here, I leave it at that for today, and I talk to you again soon. Bye.